Hello, welcome to the Highlands Ranch Mansion. My name is Susie Appleby and I am one of the employees here at the mansion. It's my job to run the historic tours for the mansion. So when we have visitors that want to come here and see the mansion and learn about its history, I will schedule those tours. What I'm going to do today for you is a very special virtual tour of the mansion. And I'll let you know a little bit about the history here at the mansion and then also some of the owners that lived here. And I highly recommend someday in the future, if you want to come over and see the mansion in person for yourself, we can absolutely set that up for you. Bring your families over as well. Just give us a call and we'll let you know how to schedule that. So before we begin this tour, I want to ask you a question. Did you know that Highlands Ranch used to be a huge ranch with miles and miles of open land and cattle roaming the hillsides? If you think about your favorite places in Highlands Ranch, places like maybe your house or your friend's house or your school or the pools at the rec center or the library or your favorite park, all of those places used to be on that huge ranch known as Highlands Ranch. And I want to show you this photo right here. This is a photo taken about 45 years ago, and it's taken from an airplane way out on the east side of Highlands Ranch looking down on that ranch. And if you look at this photo, can you find the mansion on this photo? It's a little hard to see because it is surrounded by tall trees just like it is today. But this is the mansion right here within all of these trees here. And if you look at all this open, empty land surrounding the mansion. That's how it used to look back then. So all of our houses, our libraries, our pools, our schools are on now what used to be wide open ranch land. The room that we're in right now is called the Great Hall. This was built about 8 years ago. And this actually, where I'm standing right now, used to be outside. This is where now we have all of our events and our big parties here at the mansion. But what did not used to have this ceiling that connected the two buildings right here. This right here was an outbuilding, a separate building on its own called the carriage house. And if you see those big open doorways, that's where the owners that lived here used to store their carriages and their automobiles, and it was a totally separate building, kind of like a garage, the way we use a garage today. And then what we did was come in and ceiling over the top of it here to create this big event space. Okay, so we're still in the Great Hall, and remember I mentioned that this used to be outside. So this side of the room here used to be the back of the house. And so you imagine that this right here is outside, and it's actually an ice house. So what they would do is pull up a wagon here, back it up to the back of the ice house, open it up, and then they would load in blocks of ice into the ice house here to keep the food that was in there cold. They could put things like meats and fruits, vegetables in there, and that ice would keep that food very, very cold. It was usually insulated in hay or straw and then placed in there, and it did a really good job of keeping the food cold, kind of like our refrigerators today do. So now we've moved out of the Great Hall and we're in what we call our portrait hallway. The reason we call it our portrait hallway is that this is where we have photos of all 6 of our private owners and then a photo that's associated with each owner. And I will be telling you more about these owners as we go along on this virtual tour. But for now, I'm just going to focus on our first owner here, Mr. Samuel Allen Long, and I'm going to show you a photo that's associated with him. This is, believe it or not, this is the mansion. This is how it got started. It was first built in 1891. And can you believe that that little stone farmhouse eventually became this huge 27,000 square foot mansion that we have today? Built in 1891 by Samuel Allen Long. He was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he built the house and had a ranch surrounding it, and he called all of that area Rotherwood, and that was after a farm that he had admired back in Pittsburgh. So the door I'm coming through right now, this was the original front door of that small stone farmhouse that I just showed you a picture of, the one that was called Rotherwood that Samuel Allen Long built. This was the original front door of that house. And then next, a man named John Springer came along. This was his picture right here. This is what John Springer looked like. And he purchased that little stone farmhouse called Rotherwood, and he added onto that building and created this right here. This was his house. And specifically what he built was this tower-like feature right here called a turret. And this tower here gave the mansion kind of a castle-like appearance. And the tower is still out there today, the turret I should say, is still out there today. So when you come to visit the mansion, you'll be able to see that turret out there. Okay, so now we have moved off of the entry room that we were just in, and we're in the grand living room. This is one of the favorite rooms of some of the visitors that come here to see us. And when John Springer owned this house, this was the first room that you came into when you entered the house. And the way that you entered was right here through what now is a window. This was actually the original front door. And then later, another owner came along, a man named Frank Kistler, and when he built that entry room that we were just in, he changed this front door into a window. But if you look at it, it really does look like what used to be a front door, doesn't it? This is the current front door that we use for visitors to come into the mansion. And this is just a stunning wood-carved door that Frank Kistler added when he did his remodeling. So when he moved the front door from the living room where that window is now and moved it into here, this is what he added, and he had an artist come in and do this beautiful carvings. So again, this has been here about 1929, 1930, and has been the front door ever since. This is our beautiful clock here in the living room, and this is another feature that was added by Frank Kistler. The clock was put here on the wall about 1929, 1930. He had it built in Europe, and then he had it shipped over here to put on the mansion wall. There are lots of neat little features to find in the clock. There's lots of pomegranate fruit. You can see some cherubs, which are like little angels. There are winged angels on the side here. And then last, we have an inscription down here at the bottom of the clock that translates to "Time passes and man perceives it not," which is kind of like a fun way of saying that time sometimes passes so quickly that we don't even realize it, which is a fun quote for a clock. Now we have moved over across the room from the clock over there to the fireplace mantle, and this is another feature that Frank Kistler put in this room. It's such an interesting mantle. It tells the story of the mansion, actually. This is right here in the center of it, a bird's eye view of the mansion. So as if you were a bird flying over the mansion and you look down on it, this is what you would see. It's got lots of little features like the stairs out front, the patio here, you can see that, even the circle drive and the shrubs. And then over here, the separate outbuilding that we actually have out there that's a bowling alley. On the either side of the mantle here, we have views of the mountains, which you can see from the mansion when you look out west. And then also you have the eastern wing right here, and you'll recognize this because this right here is Samuel Allen Long's little Rotherwood house that we talked about, and then the turret that John Springer built that made it look like a castle. And then over here, you have the western wing, so that side of the house. Also, the years that Frank Kistler added this fireplace mantle, the years were 1929 to 1930. So he added those on there too. So it really tells the story of the mansion. One last feature of the mantle is up here at the top. When Frank Kistler owned the ranch, he called it the Diamond K Ranch. So he put his diamonds and Ks up here at the top. And we're going to go into the next room, but before we do that, I have one last thing I want to show you. It's a very interesting photo, so let me grab it. This photo was actually taken here in the living room, right about where I'm standing, just a little bit further than where I'm standing. If you take a look at it, you can see that it's a little boy. He's sitting on a pony right here in the middle of the room here. This was actually another owner. His name was Waite Phillips. This is his son. His name was Elliot. He had the nickname Chope. And he's sitting on a pony here in the middle of the room. And would your mother let you do that? I have a feeling she probably would not. But Chope's mother did let him do that. So this is just one of these interesting photos that we still have of the mansion. We've now moved off the living room into a room called the solarium. And when rooms are called solariums, it's usually because they've been built with a lot of windows. And the windows bring in the sunlight to make the room real bright and keep the room warm. So that's what we have here. The room originally used to be called a ballroom, and that was because this is where they had a lot of parties and a lot of dances. The floor here is perfect for dancing. It's called terrazzo. There's also a 3D border that goes all along the outside of the room. and just a very unique feature in here. We did have a family that when they were children, they spent a couple years living here in the house, and they came to visit us as adults, and they told us a funny story about how they had a birthday party in here, and they actually had a greased pig that they put in the room here, and the kids chased it around the room. That's what they did for the party. So I guess there were all kinds of parties that they had in this room. We've moved into the room that we call the library, and this is such a special room in the mansion. The reason that this room is unique is that it is built with almost no metal nails. So you have these features in the wall here, right here. We call these butterfly inlays. And then we have wooden pegs in the floor, in the room here, and then the crown molding all up there. All of those features just kind of combine to create this very tight fit for the room and keep the room together with almost no metal nails. So it's a very special room. Now we're going to go over here to this board, and we're going to go through all the owners that you guys have heard about already. So first, you remember Samuel Allen Long. He was the one from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania that built the Rotherwood Ranch. And then John Springer, he's the one that came along, built the turret and made the mansion look like a castle. This is Colonel William Hughes. He was a colonel in the Civil War, and we think that he might be responsible for building the whole western side of the house. We're doing some research on that right now. This is Wade Phillips. You remember Wade Phillips? He's the one who is the father of Chope that was sitting on that little pony in the living room there. And then this is Frank Kistler. He's the one that had that clock put in, built the fireplace mantle, did a lot of remodeling. This man right here, Lawrence Phipps Jr., you actually haven't heard about him yet. He was our last private owner, and he owned the mansion longer than any of these other owners. He owned it for almost 40 years. Lawrence Phipps Jr. was what was called the master of the hunt for the Arapaho Hunt Club. And the hunt club came out here and hunted on this big, wide open ranch. And what they did was they would wear these brightly colored uniforms right here, and they would be on horseback. And then they would have these hounds right here helping them do the hunt. And they were hunting coyote out here on the ranch. The hunt club is no longer here on the Highlands Ranch, but they do continue to hunt out on the eastern plains of Colorado. After the Phipps family moved on from the area, they sold it to developers, and developers were the ones that came in and built all the houses and schools, rec centers, shopping centers that we have here in Highlands Ranch right now. Now we're passing through the library into the dining room, and this is where the owners would have many, many fancy dinners in here. And we're going to head into the next room right here. Now we're in the butler's pantry. A lot of visitors that come here today think that this is the kitchen, but this is actually called the butler's pantry. The kitchen was out here in the hallway here, not there anymore. But we're just going to go ahead and stay here in the butler's pantry. What the servants would do is cook the food in the kitchen, and then they would bring it into this room to stage it and get it ready for the visitors that are sitting out in the dining room table waiting to eat. So they would have a very large cart here in the middle of the room, and they would load that food up on there on the cart. They would load dishes, utensils, silverware, glassware, and then they would roll it down this little slope right here. Hopefully you can see that. And they would roll that heavy cart down there, and then they'd bring it into the dining room and serve the guests that were waiting for it. So this was just a room that the servants did a lot of their work and job in. This small room here is known as the breakfast room. And the reason we call it that is that this is where the owners would come and have just a nice cozy meal together. It's a nice bright room, it's got beautiful windows. Just a nice way to start your day here is in this room. This room also has some of the oldest walls that you'll see in the mansion right here. And there's a lot of different features that are going on in these walls, like these big arches right here, a little small arch above that. So lots of different stories going on in these walls here. And this is actually where your virtual tour ends, and I hope you've enjoyed coming to and visiting the mansion virtually, hearing about our history, hearing about our owners, and I hope that you'll come over and see us in person someday. Bring your families, and we can give you a tour of the whole entire house. Today you just saw the lower level, but we can show you the second floor when you come over to see us in person, and we'll give you lots more stories and lots more information. Thank you again.